Well, the tag says so, and it looks like it's in overall good shape, but is that fur you're about to buy actually in good condition? Hate to break it to you, but there's a 75% chance it's not. And with many vendors charging hundreds, if not thousands of dollars this season for these vintage furs, we really need to keep this in mind. Now, there are a couple of reasons for this, not least of which is that most people consider cold storage an optional expense, but if these aren't stored properly, it does not take long for them to deteriorate. Another reason is people think, hey, I didn't wear my fur much this season, so I'm going to skip cleaning and conditioning. But furs really need to be cleaned and conditioned at least every couple of years to remove any dust and maintain the natural oils in the pelts. So let's go ahead and jump into a couple of things that you're going to want to keep in mind and look out for when shopping for vintage fur. I'm going to use this classic dark ranch mink stroller as an example. First things first, we're going to check the tags. This will give us some idea of quality and in some cases where the fur came from. You'll also often see the names of previous owners embroidered into the lining. Next, I check the lining itself, so is it silk or polyester? Of course, silk is always great to see, and then we're going to check the seams to make sure nothing is opening up. Repairs to the lining typically aren't that expensive, so when it comes to damage here, I'm usually pretty lenient. Moving on to the pelt, I like to start with stress points such as the shoulder. You're going to want to work your finger down into the fur all the way down to the seam. I do this all the way across the back to the next shoulder. Then we're going to come and check the armhole seams. So we're going to work our way from the shoulder all the way down to the armpit, front and back, and of course we'll do this on both sides. Once I've made sure to check all of the major stress points, then I'll move on to the rest of the coat. Now if you're lucky, you'll have what's called a French hem, where the lining is open along the bottom. And if you pull this up, you'll have full access to the back of the pelts, and it's much easier to assess condition. When actually examining the backs of the pelts, of course we're going to feel. It should feel a bit like suede. Then I like to bunch it up, feel, and listen. There shouldn't be any crunching or crackling. And here you're going to want to be very careful, but I like to give it a bit of a tug to make sure there's some give. This lets me know that the pelts are still nice and supple and still have some life in them. Now, if unfortunately you do find a rip, it's most likely to be along a seam. If this is the case, then either the thread has come loose or the stitches have actually ripped through the pelt, in which case we're probably looking at dry rot. How you're going to check for this is you're going to look and see if the actual thread of the stitch is still intact. If it is, then unfortunately the stitches have ripped through the pelt and I would put it back on the rack. If it's just a loose stitch, then this can be repaired. Just keep in mind that the larger the opening, the more costly the repair. I recently had a loose seam that was about 1 inch long repaired, and it cost me about $35 to give you some reference. If the rip goes clear across the pelt and does not follow a seam, I would definitely put it back. And last but not least, you're always going to want to check for shedding. Just keep in mind that some furs, such as fox and especially rabbit, will shed even when they're brand new. Anyway, I really hope this helps. It's really disheartening to thrift a beautiful fur at a great price, only to find out it's reached the end of its usability as a coat.